Uh, the other thing that I have seen, I'm going to tell you how I read body language, and so I get into a meeting and I'm meeting somebody who I don't know, and I'm presenting, and uh, as I present, one cue that I pick up is as I go through my presentation, uh, assuming I've given my visiting card. Okay, the person picks up my visiting card in the middle of the meeting and sees it, once. For me, that's a cue that I've connected with that person, right? Because the person wants to know who's this. He seems to be making sense. Looks like he understands my business. Okay, and so therefore, are there such visual cues where people start connecting with a stranger in a meeting where you're out to go there to do business, right? And there are these cues that you pick up. And I'm giving an example where I'm not an expert in body language as you are, but I know that, say, this is a gesture that makes me believe that, I've connected with that person, right? So, are there such, what I call as props that help me and understand this? Because many of our IT professionals, for example, are presenting to the professionals in the US, in other markets, where such body language is very important, because you're presenting through through a VC, you're talking about your project, so it's important for you to understand if the message and the information that you're passing on is connecting with them. So what are the kind of props for me if I were an IT professional listening to this conversation? How should I be uh, looking at some of these gestures, and are there props for me to understand it? Is what I wanted to check with you.
Okay, so I think that's a great observation that you made. Somebody checking the visiting card to make sense of, who is this person who's presenting? Let me know a little more about you. I will just put a word of caution there, because when we talk about nonverbal communication, the minute details are very important. For example, somebody is listening into this conversation, they go back, and in their conversation, they see somebody picking up a card, but there the person is not reading the name. They are just looking, they are playing with the card, or they're just
Hmm.
rubbing the edges of the card. These are all displacement activities, like things that we do because we don't want to show what's actually happening in our minds, right? Or we are getting a little distracted, that's why you are fiddling with things around you. So these minute details are very important, but the one you said, that's absolutely correct, that if somebody is looking at that card and trying to make sense, then they really do want to know more about you. Okay, now coming back to your question. As a presenter, there are two things that are absolutely important. One is, as soon as you step into that meeting, whether it's offline, physical, or it's online, looking at your audience, you should know how you want to tweak your conversation. There are so many times when I have to work with people to help them to either simplify or make their conversations a little more nuanced, or bring in more what should you say, the expert kind of language, because depending on the audience, you need to tweak your conversation and your body language. Okay, that is one thing. So making sense of that audience is an absolute must before you start presenting. Second thing is, are they ready to deep dive or not? That readiness will show if you do small talk, or as soon as you start, the mimicry that happens. Now this mimicry is easier to see online, because people are also just looking at you, they are staring at the screens, there's just so much of you and them on the screen. When I say mimicry, what happens is, maybe you give a smile, it could be a polite smile, because real smile doesn't come very easy to most of us, but you will see that instant polite smile coming up on others as well. Okay, so that gives you that cue that people are ready to listen in. This is what helps you to understand not just the smile, but this kind of mimicry. For example, you show that I'm very excited to begin. A lot of us use eyebrow raise. You will see that
Mm.
eyebrow raise happening. See, like I mentioned, and you showed that eyebrow raise right away. So that is, people are tuned in. So you should wait for people to get that tuned in, and then you begin. If you wait for that moment and begin, then it helps to take that presentation faster, to see people actually absorbed in. Otherwise what happens is, you will start out because you have that agenda to start, and you just start making a presentation. You will not see that response coming in. So wait for the right moment. The way people will show that is either by responding non-verbally, or when you ask simple questions, right? You will see that response coming in. So wait for that, and then you begin. Again, when you are presenting, if you see that your audience has stopped responding in different ways, so for example, this becomes a little easier. Let me say that online offline has got their different ways in which you can decipher this. For example, online, most of us, we have a habit of nodding a little more, because we know that the other person can't see much of our body language, or we might
Mm.
be seated upright, or most of us don't go to the back and sit, because we know that the other person is expecting us to listen in. Now when this changes, you will see response rate going down, like the nods might go down, or when you're asking a question, you don't see that attention coming to the question. The person was distracted, like their eye contact was somewhere else, and that eye contact does not change. Okay, so these are minute things that will tell you that your audience is getting a little distracted. There are obviously different ways to bring them back in, but right now we are just discussing how you know that the audience is with you or not with you. In an offline setup, the way you will start getting to know is, people start distancing themselves. Distancing could be that they were oriented towards you, that body was towards you, it goes to the other direction, or it becomes more inclined towards the other people, or maybe they were leaning in, they stop leaning in, right? So these are ways. Mostly it's through the orientation that you get to know that the person was listening to you, they are not listening anymore, right? So online offline, there are different ways of knowing, but people respond. Usually they respond. If you are unsure that a person, whether they are with you or not, you just ask a simple question. The question need not be a question where the other person needs to respond back. It can even be a rhetoric question, where you're just asking them to stimulate their brains and be with you. You should see them responding back in some way or the other. It could be through an expression of surprise. If you asked a question that wants them to be a little surprised, it could be an expression of showing a little smile, if you are evoking humor. So while you are talking, how is that response coming in through their expressions and body language? That tells you whether the audience is with you or not.
Fantastic. Brilliant explanation, and so many takeaways in the examples that you gave.